This episode of Midco Sports Magazine is presented by Shields.
Hello and welcome to Midco Sports Magazine. We've got a couple of can-do stories this month to inspire your spirit. We'll go to a small town in Minnesota and a high school prom with a pair of special guests, a vibrant young woman with cerebral palsy and her companion, a prominent college hockey player who will probably soon be playing in the NHL. That story coming up in a bit. But we start with a group of college students at South Dakota State University, and they're students, not student athletes, but they pulled off a pretty amazing accomplishment to help out kids in another country. Here is David Brown with part one of their story.
There are realities and there are dreams, two separate entities defined by what we know is true and what we hope is true. Realities and dreams usually conflict with one another, but all it takes is a revolution to challenge the status quo.
My name is Chris Gould.
My name is Michael Amon.
My name is Shahid Shihan.
My name is Ben Ruggenberg.
My name is Brett Zatrowski, and I'm biking across America.
And I'm biking across America.
Most dreams happen overnight. This is no dream. This is 5 South Dakota State students and Delta Chi fraternity members deciding reality on December 31st, 2013.
Mike stopped us and said, "Why don't we bike all 48 states?"
There's no way, you're crazy. I want to have no part in that.
Mike is crazy. I mean, sure.
We're the ones that are crazy enough to do it, I guess.
A couple of the guys actually ignored his idea in the very beginning, but as the planning got down and we all sat down together, the ideas rolled in, and this looked more serious than we initially planned.
The ambition to bike the lower 48 states was admirable, but the group needed something more concrete than the roads they'd be traveling.
We decided that the reason we were all together was because of education, and this was a privilege we were born into. The kids in Honduras, it's basically a lottery of birth that they are not allowed, or they can't get access to the education we are getting.
The group had its purpose. Working with a nonprofit organization called Impact Ministries International, the goal became clear: raise $100,000, 50 grand on their own, with a matching 50 from the NPO, to help build a high school and secondary education facility for orphans in Honduras, a Central American country where less than half of all children go beyond the 6th grade.
We noticed that there was a desperate need for change, and the kids really didn't have what they needed, so we realized that we could provide that for them.
Chris and I actually went to Honduras over spring break and got to a chance to meet some of the kids and see the facilities, and it's just really spectacular what they've done there, and I think it's amazing to see some of the stories that these kids have come from the worst of the worst possible situations.
Education is what's brought all of us together, and education is what we want to be able to give back, because we realize how important it is, how impeccable it is to have education, because an educated youth is an intelligent youth, and an intelligent youth is very capable.
Of course, the group of 5 needed to educate themselves on how they would actually pull this off. For the first part of 2014, the goodwill of others helped the 5 on the path to their own goodwill.
We've been relying on donations from other people to get us really going on this bike trip, and luckily the community of Brookings has really followed through for us, and so has the Delta Chi fraternity.
Delta Chi alums donated money to help purchase tandem bikes, and the group set up a penny per mile program on a GoFundMe website. Finances aside, the 5 also needed to actually train for the 10,000-mile trip, the equivalent of more than 381 marathons.
We started going to spinning classes, we started biking outside. I mean, some days we biked to campus, so it was 20 degrees outside.
We figured out pretty quick that you need to really trust the person in front, because the person in back doesn't have control of steering, he doesn't have control of braking, so you really have to be communicating and back and forth, and it's difficult, but we'll get used to it, I'm sure.
The prep work continued for months. Where would they eat? Where would they sleep? Who rides which bike at what time? Getting off on the right foot was always the most important step, but the 5 knew that this reality required a little faith.
We're gonna really rely on people to take us into their homes and, swap stories and share food, so I think that's the best way of communicating with people is sharing a meal. So I think that'll be really powerful for people, and I hope that they take the advantage of the opportunity.
The training, the fundraising, and the dream all led to May 13th, 2014. A pancake breakfast would be the kickoff to their cross-country quest. The group planned to bike around 60 miles per day and return to Brookings in approximately 5 months. They prepared as best they could, and now reality has set in.
The time on this earth is very limited. We got to make use of it as much as we can, and sometimes, you just got to take a leap of faith and say, hey, I'm going to do this.
Now that we've seen the faces of the children, and we've told them, this is what we're going to try to do for you, and it really gives a whole new meaning to the trip.
I want to share with the world something special, so I don't want to fail. I'm not going to fail.
Well, when we come back, the cross-country journey itself for the SDSU 5, and an ironic reminder that numbers don't always tell the whole story.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.
Welcome back to Midco Sports Magazine. We've seen the 5 South Dakota State University students on a tremendous mission. Their bike ride across the lower 48 states to raise money for a school in Honduras. Back now to David Brown with the rest of the story and what happened on the long road home.
May 13th, 2014, the start of the great unknown. 5 South Dakota State students departed from Brookings on 3 bicycles, heading toward new frontiers and old country roads. They were about to get an education unlike any class they'd ever taken at SDSU, all in the name of education for the orphans of Honduras. Along the way, this group of 5 learned 5 very distinct lessons. The first one, the physical act of biking, may have actually been the easiest part of the entire trip, because no matter how much you prepare, you'll always encounter obstacles beyond the pedaling.
I think mentally, just being away from family and friends, and every day you're in a new place, you kind of gotta adjust to the new situation.
Overall, I think the biggest challenge was fundraising. None of us had really had a lot of fundraising experience.
The group eventually worked out a schedule where they would take Sundays off from biking in order to speak to churches and other organizations about their cause. Which leads us to their second, more positive lesson: having faith can be a reward in and of itself. Before they left, the 5 made a point they would not spend a single dollar on lodging. And that's exactly what happened.
People were just very, very kind and just warm-hearted once they figured out what we were doing, that we weren't trying to, raise money for ourselves, that we were doing it for something greater than ourselves. They just completely opened up their homes, opened up their arms to us.
If we hadn't have had people to stay with along the way, or met people at gas stations randomly along the way, we probably would have quit, but people around America are just incredible, so they kept us going.
From family to complete strangers to camping in parks, the 5 always found a way to make it from sunset to sunrise, with each day providing a new place and new people. The bond these brothers were forming along the way was growing, through cold breezy nights and hot summer days. The group was halfway through what was once considered a dream when a harsh reality set in. Lesson number 3 left the group with only 3 bikers.
So I actually, I left halfway. I had to go to grad school.
A part of me did really feel that I was abandoning the team.
Ben Ruggeberg and Shahid Shihan each had post-secondary education opportunities they had to go home for. A cruel irony considering the reason they made this trip in the first place.
We're all about higher education. We're all about educating people and empowering them to have a successful life because of education. And so telling them that, no, you can't go on this, that just doesn't make any sense, because we're still in that point in our life where we have to educate ourselves.
With Brett, Mike, and Chris left to bike the final 5,000 miles, a new game plan needed to take shape, with guys having to fulfill unfamiliar roles in an unfamiliar place.
Ben kind of added this sarcastic comedic humor to the group that Brett, Mike, and I couldn't fill. and Shihan had this level-headedness that really balanced us out. And so having those guys gone made it trying on us, just trying to figure out where our places were now.
In order to make the rest of the journey feasible, the group of 3 downsized to 1 tandem bike and 1 van to carry the rest of their gear, including an extra bike. They would alternate positions every day, while Ben and Shihan would still help the team from afar, updating their website and spreading their message.
Brett, Mike, and I, our relationship got pretty strong because of that. It was just us 3 on the road together now.
Lesson number 1, obstacles will always show up. Lesson number 2, have faith in humanity. Lesson number 3, irony can sometimes be cruel. Lesson number 4 showed the group a weird combination of the first 3, where an obstacle actually showed the worst in humanity, an ironic contradiction to what they'd previously learned. Murphy's Law states that whatever can go wrong, will go wrong, and it all came to a head one day in late September in Maryland, when Brett was ahead of the group in the van.
We were leaving Baltimore, and Chris and I were on the tandem, and we were biking in the bike lane and doing pretty much everything that we were supposed to do. And
this black Camaro just came out of nowhere and nailed us, knocked us into the lane of traffic.
we didn't get hurt. We just had a couple scrapes and stuff, but our bike was kind of mangled up.
So I give Brett a call, and he's like, all right, well, I'm at a coffee shop. I'll be there soon.
Run out to the van, jump in the car, start tearing off to the location that Chris had sent me. And all of a sudden I noticed the strap is like flapping in the back, and I'm thinking, oh great, like Chris tied a knot and it wasn't good enough, and so the strap's flapping. So then I get up, I park, and I look on top, and the bike is gone. So I'm thinking, oh my gosh, it fell off. So then upon like taking the straps off, I noticed that they were cut, and so I was like, this day just cannot get any worse.
We had about a month to go, so it was almost just like, I just want to give up now and just drive the rest of the way, but we kept going.
If we would have had to buy a bike, we would have done it. Like, we were going to do whatever it took to make it home.
Their worst day was just that, a day. The sun rose the next morning, the group got their mangled bike fixed, and the 5th and final lesson was realized. No matter what happens, you just keep pedaling. And after deciding to bike across the lower 48 states on New Year's Eve 2013, another holiday marked the group's return to Brookings. On October 31st, 2014, with the added treat of Ben and Shihan joining the remaining 3 for the final leg of the trip, the group returned on Halloween, having raised more than $31,000 for the school in Honduras.
There's definitely times where I stop and I think about it, and it almost seems like it didn't happen, as if it was just some crazy dream or something.
It wasn't a dream, it was reality. But it was a complicated reality. Only 3 of the 5 team members actually biked the entire way. And with the self-admitted problems of fundraising, the group fell short of their $50,000 goal. It may not be the tightly scripted Hollywood ending we're used to, but that's what makes the journey so unique. In the quest for perfection, imperfection wouldn't stand in the way.
The kids are going to be a lot better off because of what we did, and we might not have gotten that goal, but we definitely put them in a really great direction to head.
It's often said that when someone takes a shortcut toward an ultimate goal, they're cutting corners. But that phrase in reality is an oxymoron, because the ultimate goal is to come full circle. Circles don't have corners to cut, they just have roads to be traveled. And all of those roads lead home, no matter how you get there. Through 48 states and 9,496 miles, whether they bike the whole way or halfway, these 5 have completed their revolution.
I'm Chris Gould.
I'm Brett Zatrowski.
I'm Ben Ruggerberg.
I'm Michael Lehman,
My name is Shahid Shihan, and I biked across America.
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 And I biked 48 states across America.
Joined by David Brown, and a pretty amazing story, accomplishment for these SDSU students to do what they did. So what is the status of the school in Honduras now?
Well, there's some great news. Even though they fell short of their fundraising goal, they did some speaking engagements after they got back. They worked with their nonprofit, and the school is now completely built. A couple of them went down there back in January. They saw the progress, and they finished building the school up. So it's great to see that these kids in Honduras don't have to be limited just to elementary school. They're not resigned to that life. They can get some post-secondary education opportunities.
Up next, a Cinderella story in a small town in Minnesota. A high school prom, a young woman fighting a terrible disease, and her dashing date, who is also one of the best goalies in college hockey.
Midco Sports Magazine on Midco Sports Network is presented by Shields.